I work for the Chicago Department of Water Management in the Underground Utilities Maintenance Crew. In short, we take care of the city's sewers and underground utilities. Most people have no idea how vast the network of pipes under Chicago is. It's a real city beneath the city. Old tunnels, concrete arches, intersections where it's easy to get lost. Which is exactly what happens to people who go underground in search of adventure. On numerous occasions, in coordination with the police, we have rescued frightened and exhausted thrill seekers from there. Otherwise, the work is usually boring. Clogs, leaks, repairs, and scheduled inspections. But I remember that day in detail. We had a scheduled inspection of part of the utilities in the eastern part of the city. My partner Eddie and I arrived at the site and began checking our equipment. Everything had to be at hand and in working order. But alas, my headlamp was flickering, turning on and off. It would play a cruel joke in this story. When we get back to the office, be sure to go to the warehouse and get a new one, Eddie muttered. In the meantime, take my small handheld flashlight. My partner had been with me for 3 years, a calm guy, 5 years older than me with a great sense of humor. We often joked around with each other. After opening the manhole cover and inspecting everything, Eddie checked the air sensor. Everything was clear. Taking all our equipment and attaching the flashlights to our helmets, we began to descend. The smell hit us immediately. Dampness, stagnant water, and rust. The light barely illuminated the space around us, and a quiet dripping sound could be heard from behind the walls. Water trickled down the concrete in a thin stream, the sound echoing. "I love these places," Eddie muttered as he descended behind me. "A paradise for romantics." We walked about 50 meters along the main tunnel. There was a low, barely audible hum, as if a huge pump was working somewhere. But there were no pumps nearby. "Do you hear that?" I asked. "Yeah. It sounds like someone's drilling." We turned into a side passage. It was already slightly flooded, with water reaching almost to our ankles. The further we went, the heavier the air became. After a couple of minutes of walking, we came to a place where the tunnel split. We could hear the same humming sound on the left, so we decided to go there. Suddenly, the sound disappeared as if it had never been there. Very strange. This section was clearly older than the rest. Brick walls, bricks crumbling in places from age and moisture, rusty staples. The flashlights illuminated the damp walls. Suddenly, Eddie stopped. "Ben, shine your light over there." I raised my flashlight. Further on, the tunnel widened, forming a kind of dome where the water did not reach. There were bones on the floor. At first, I thought it was just trash, but no. The bones were piled up in heaps. Some had bits of fur on them, cat and dog skulls, a dozen, maybe more. Some were fresh. "Damn," Eddie said quietly. "What the hell is this?" We looked at each other. The area looked like a den. There were blood-like stains on the lighter parts of the wall. In the corner lay a rag and a pile of rubbish. "Think it's strays?" he asked. "Maybe," I replied, though I didn't believe it myself. "But who eats dogs?" We stood silently, listening. Suddenly, a sound came from deep within the tunnel. It was low and hollow, like a vibration. Several blows against metal, then the sound of old metal door hinges, then footsteps. Slow, heavy, echoing. Eddie turned off his flashlight and whispered, "Be quiet." We were left in the dark. We could hear water dripping somewhere nearby. The footsteps were getting closer. A light appeared from the depths, faint, as if reflected. A shadow moved along the wall. Then a figure appeared, tall, stooped. For a moment it seemed human. But when I saw how it moved, I realized it wasn't. The creature walked unevenly, as if its legs didn't obey it. Its shoulders were too broad and its head was too low. It stopped, bent down to the ground, and picked something up. There was a slurping sound and the crack of bones, and we witnessed its meal. I felt the blood freeze in my veins at the very realization of what I was seeing. Eddie exhaled quietly beside me. The light on my helmet flickered slightly and the beam slid across the wall. Just the right moment to start working, of course. A hopeless thought flashed through my mind. The creature froze. Then it slowly turned its head in our direction. I don't know what it was. Its face, if you could call it that, was elongated and pale. Its eyes reflected the light like a beast in the dark. Huge teeth. We both stood motionless. We were separated by about 30 meters or more, and then it made a sound, like a call, so terrifying that I could barely keep myself from screaming. I frantically searched my mind for what to do, fear paralyzing me. And then Eddie did something I didn't expect. He turned on his flashlight and started shouting loudly, stomping his feet and banging a wrench on a metal pipe. I don't know who was more scared at that moment, me or the creature whose meal we had interrupted. It lunged to the side, disappearing into another passageway. The sound of footsteps, splashes, then silence. We stood in shock, listening, but there was only the sound of water. "Let's go," Eddie said, quickly. We moved back, trying not to run. Then we ran anyway. Every sound behind us seemed very close and dangerous. The echo in the tunnels works wonders. You can't tell where anyone is. When we got to the hatch, I literally pushed Eddie up. I climbed out after him. The air seemed the cleanest I had ever breathed. We sat on the side of the road, silent. Eddie was breathing heavily. I tried to convince myself that it was a person, maybe a homeless person, sick with a distorted appearance. "What was that?" I asked. "No idea," Eddie replied, "but something very scary." And then he added, "I'm not going back there." That same evening, I reported what had happened to my superiors, and of course no one believed us. Eddie and I were reprimanded for not completing our work. The next day, it started raining heavily, and it lasted for 4 whole days. The water level in the collector rose and all inspection work was suspended. When the water level returned to normal, a new team was sent there. They inspected all the utilities and found nothing suspicious. But I know there is something under the streets of Chicago, and Eddie and I stepped into its territory that day. I work for a small company that services ventilation systems in New York City. We travel to different buildings, from old apartment buildings to office towers in the city center. The work is routine: filters, motors, noise, dust, sometimes unpleasant odors, nothing unusual. But that day still sticks in my mind. It was a normal Tuesday. Traffic jams, coffee to go, gray skies. The dispatcher called me and said there was an urgent call. An office building on Park Avenue complaining about strange noises and a smell coming from the ventilation system. I had just finished a job in Brooklyn but decided to stop by. According to the client, the smell had been there for several days, and at night, one of the employees heard strange noises, rustling, squeaking, and growling coming from the air duct. At first glance, these facts seemed like some kind of fiction to me. In 20 years of working in this field, I've seen just about everything. But this was the first time I'd heard of anything like this. The office was typical: glass partitions, carpet, water coolers, printers. I was greeted by a girl with a badge that said Amy. She looked agitated. "Are you from maintenance?" Thank God. Everyone here is nervous. There are scary stories going around the office. Someone made up that something is living in our ventilation system. At first glance, it seems like fiction, she added. But there really are strange noises coming from there and a terrible smell. Some employees refuse to come to work. I hope you can help us. I smiled and nodded. She led me to one of the offices. There really was something strange there. The air was heavy, as if it were humid. And it didn't smell like dust or smoke. More like someone had been cooking something for a long time, then left it, and it went bad. I removed the ventilation grill and shone my flashlight inside. Inside was a normal metal duct. The flashlight slid along the walls, and at the end where it split into 4 separate lines, something caught my attention. Looking closer, I realized it was some kind of strange debris. I took out a hook and pulled the lump out. There were wrappers, scraps of fabric, even something that looked like pieces of gray, thin, tangled wool. "Maybe rats?" Amy asked. "Possibly," I replied, but I wasn't sure myself. The lumps were too big and the wool wasn't rat wool. I said we needed to check the duct from the inside to make sure nothing was stuck in there. The girl suggested calling security, but I waved her off. This kind of thing happens sometimes. Sometimes it was a pigeon, sometimes a cat, sometimes someone trying to run wires and leaving trash behind. I took out my coveralls, headlamp, and respirator and climbed inside. The metal was cold. The air was stuffy. At first, I just crawled forward, lighting my way. Dust covered the walls, and in some places the walls were scratched by something which already made me wary. After a few meters, the air became heavier and the smell intensified. I stumbled upon something like a nest, a pile of paper cups, plastic spoons, scraps of insulation, even a piece of a shirt. It was all woven into a dense mass, as if someone had collected the trash on purpose. I decided to crawl further to see what was in the main ventilation shaft. The tunnel went deep into the building and again split into 4 separate branches. It was impossible to see everything, but I felt that the answer was close. The air in the duct was heavy, smelling of dampness and something terribly unpleasant. But I couldn't figure out what the smell was. I wanted to look into the central duct and turn back, when suddenly I heard a strange guttural sound. Then another sound, dull and deep, as if metal was bending under weight, followed by a click, as if it had straightened back up. I froze. The sound repeated, this time closer. The tunnel beneath me shook slightly. Someone heavy was moving through the tunnel about 10 meters ahead. My head was swarming with thoughts. Who else could be here besides me, and so heavy that the ventilation system bent under their weight? One main thought: I need to get back immediately. At that moment, I was in no mood for jokes. It would be difficult for me to escape from the narrow tunnel quickly, and I didn't want to encounter something unknown there. I turned my flashlight on full power and slowly crawled back, trying not to make any noise. The metal under my elbows creaked quietly, and every breath I took sounded too loud, it seemed to me. After moving back a couple of meters, I slowly raised my head to look ahead, and froze. The flashlight illuminated something ahead. It was huge, irregular in shape. The body filled almost the entire passage, and I didn't immediately understand what I was seeing. It looked like fused limbs, vague outlines. The skin, or something like it, was dark, gray-brown, shiny in the light. The creature was moving, slowly, heavily, its back pressed against the metal, which groaned dully under the weight. I wasn't breathing. 2 eyes flashed in the light of the flashlight. A glint, like a predator when you shine a light in its eyes at night. I recoiled and hit my shoulder against the wall. The creature slowly began to move forward. The metal bent under its weight. I didn't think, I just crawled back as fast as I could, almost blindly. The flashlight shook, its beam bouncing off the walls. I heard soft thuds. I literally fell out the last few meters, collapsing onto the floor. Amy was standing next to the guard, saying something, but I couldn't hear her. I couldn't breathe. "What happened?" the guard asked. I looked up, barely managing to squeeze out the words, "There's someone there." He looked at me, then at the grate. He shone his flashlight inside. "It's empty," he said after a minute. "There's no one there." I didn't answer. I just sat on the floor, feeling my hands tremble. Later, I tried to explain it to myself logically. Maybe it was the play of light, an optical illusion, or lack of sleep. But I came to my senses and realized that I had seen something strange, something real, but I couldn't explain what it was. I never completed the order that day. No one believed my story, and my boss decided that I just didn't want to do my job. He sent me on vacation for a week. Since then, I only work with a partner, and if I need to climb into the ventilation system again, he does it for me. That's how phobias appear.